Late autumn, 1948. The forest line is collapsing, and the army has stopped sending anyone who believes they will come back. Three commanders have already tried to hold this sector, and all three left behind nothing but broken maps, empty trenches, and radio logs filled with silence where answers should have been. That is when they bring him back. The retired captain walks into the command post without ceremony, 47 years old, face unchanged by time but hardened by something worse than age. No one calls him sir at first. They just watch him in silence, like they are trying to confirm whether the stories about him were real, or just something soldiers invented to survive fear. He doesn't ask what happened to the previous commanders. He already knows they failed. He asks how much of the forest is still under control. Hours later, he is standing at the edge of the front line, looking into a forest that has swallowed entire battalions. Behind him, exhausted soldiers wait for orders they no longer trust anyone to give. In front of him, the trees move slightly in the wind, but something about it feels deliberate. For the first time in months, the line does not feel like it is holding, it feels like it is being watched. Before we continue, if you're drawn to immersive war stories like this, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment what you would do in this situation. Would you stay on a collapsing front line, or walk away before the forest closes in completely? Late autumn, 1948. The war in this region has no clear beginning anymore, only layers of failed operations stacked on top of each other. The northern forest front has become a place commanders are sent to solve problems they cannot understand and return without answers, or not return at all. Three commanders have already tried to stabilize the line. The first pushed to deep and lost entire patrol groups to unseen ambushes. The second fortified to tightly and slowly watch the forest around every position until supply routes became impossible. The third tried to reorganize everything at once and broke under the pressure of constant communication failures and disappearing units. After that, command stopped rotating. It started collapsing. That is when the name returned to the surface of military records. A retired captain, once responsible for holding this exact forest decades earlier, the only officer who ever managed to keep a line intact inside it. He left the army years ago, disappeared from military life completely, and was not expected to be involved again. But when the situation reached a point where maps no longer matched reality, there were no other names left to call. The retired captain arrives at the forward command trench just after midday. The light is pale, filtered through a ceiling of thin gray sky that never fully clears. No vehicles move behind the line, no engines in the distance, only exhausted soldiers shifting positions in silence, as if noise itself has become dangerous in this place. He walks past men who stop what they are doing just to watch him pass. Some recognize the name immediately, others only recognize the weight of his presence. No introductions are made. The officers already know why he is here. The soldiers only know that someone new has taken interest in a front that refuses to stabilize. The first thing he asks for is not manpower, not ammunition, but the last 3 days of radio logs. He listens without interruption, reading patterns in broken transmissions that others dismissed as static. He does not react to reports of missing patrols or failed contact. Instead, he studies how often silence occurs after movement reports. By late afternoon, he requests a map of the forest sector that has already been marked as unpredictable. The paper is covered in overlapping corrections, erased lines, and outdated positions. He traces old routes with his finger, noticing something the previous commanders ignored. The forest is not random, it is repeating behavior. That night, a patrol is sent out under his revised instructions. Smaller unit, slower movement, no unnecessary communication. The soldiers expect confusion or another lost group added to the list of failures. Instead, they return with confirmation of contact zones that no previous commander had identified. But something is wrong. One soldier is missing from the count. No one saw him fall behind. No one heard a shot. Only an empty space in formation where he should have been. And the realization that the forest is still ahead of them, watching, adapting, waiting for the next mistake. No search party is sent beyond a short distance, because everyone already understands the truth without saying it aloud. Once someone is taken deep enough into this forest, recovery becomes theory. not procedure. The captain does not order panic. He simply asks for the patrol route again, from memory, then compares it to the map on the table. Inside the command trench, silence becomes structured. Orders are spoken less. Observe more. The captain begins changing how movement happens along the line. Not larger formations, but smaller, slower, and deliberately uneven. He removes predictability first, as if the forest is reading their habits. By morning, he has redrawn the defensive layout, not to resist the forest, but to move with its gaps. He identifies where visibility breaks naturally between trees, where sound travels too far, and where it dies completely. Those zones become control points. Soldiers are repositioned without explanation. They follow because nothing else has worked. The radio operator reports something unusual. Static is no longer random. It appears in intervals after movement reports from deeper patrol zones. The captain listens, but does not confirm or deny what it might mean. Instead, he increases patrol spacing and reduces communication frequency, fewer transmissions, fewer traces. That afternoon, a second patrol returns earlier than expected. They report signs of enemy movement, but no engagement, just observation, footprints that appear and disappear, as if the ground itself is being used in patterns instead of steps. The soldiers speak quietly, and settled not by attack, but by being watched without interruption. The captain studies their report and marks several points on the map. Then he stops, because for the first time since arriving, he recognizes something familiar in the pattern, not the enemy's strength, but their method, the same method he once saw decades earlier, in the same forest, when it first refused to be held. The first full assault begins in daylight, under a pale cold sky that strips the forest of its usual concealment, but does nothing to reduce its danger. The attack does not announce itself with a single front or a clear advance. Instead, pressure builds across multiple points of the line at once. As soldiers report movement between trees that vanishes the moment it is seen, what should be a visible battlefield becomes something unstable, where sight and understanding fail to match. The outer patrol line breaks in fragments. Contact is established, lost, then re-established somewhere else entirely. Gunfire erupts in short bursts, echoing through trunks and returning from directions that confuse even experienced soldiers. The enemy does not push as a single force, but applies controlled pressure, testing weaknesses in spacing and reaction time. Within minutes, it becomes clear that this is not a chaotic assault, but a coordinated one shaped by terrain awareness. The captain moves forward immediately, not reacting with urgency, but with confirmation. He issues orders that do not reinforce positions blindly, but instead redirect movement toward natural breaks. In elevation and visibility, his decisions focus on controlling angles rather than holding ground. The soldiers begin repositioning into formations that feel unfamiliar, abandoning instinctive clustering for spaced control of sight lines between trees. As fighting intensifies, daylight becomes both advantage and exposure. Every movement is visible, yet nothing is stable enough to track. Soldiers fire at partial silhouettes that disappear mid-engagement. The forest amplifies sound in unpredictable ways, making direction unreliable. In this environment, hesitation becomes as dangerous as action, and misjudged timing leads to immediate collapse of small positions along the line. The captain arrives at a fractured section, where defenders are already losing ground in controlled steps. He does not raise his voice or attempt to rally them emotionally. Instead, he adjusts the structure of the defense within seconds, placing squads into staggered positions that align with natural cover and sight breaks. The change is immediate, not because the enemy stops, but because their movement paths are interrupted by unexpected resistance geometry. The enemy adapts quickly, attempting to re-establish pressure through alternate angles, but the forest no longer provides uninterrupted concealment. Engagement becomes more structured, with suppression and repositioning replacing confusion and blind reaction. The fighting remains brutal, but it is no longer one-sided. The defenders are no longer being erased silently, they are actively shaping where contact can occur. By late afternoon, the assault begins to lose cohesion. The enemy does not fully retreat, but their advance dissolves into scattered pressure points that fail to connect. The forest remains contested, but the line holds. For the first time since the collapse began, daylight does not belong entirely to the attackers or to the terrain. It becomes something controlled, fragile, and temporary under the captain's direction. The second major engagement begins under clear daylight, when the forest is fully exposed and every movement carries weight. The air is cold and still, but tension builds long before the first shot is fired. The enemy does not arrive as a single force. Instead, pressure appears across multiple points of the line, as if the forest itself is delivering coordinated contact from different directions at once. The captain responds immediately, but not by reinforcing blindly. He adjusts the structure of the defense in real time, shifting squads into staggered positions that break the enemy's ability to concentrate force. The soldiers move with discipline now, no longer reacting with confusion, but following a system they do not fully understand yet trust because it keeps them alive. As the engagement develops, daylight becomes a double-edged condition. Visibility allows recognition, but it also exposes movement. The fighting becomes controlled and brutal at the same time. The enemy attempts to push through narrow gaps between trees, but those gaps are no longer unprotected. Every advance meets calculated resistance from angles they did not anticipate. The captain moves along the line without stopping, reading the battlefield as it changes. He identifies where enemy pressure is building and redirects small units before collapse occurs. Instead of holding every position, he allows selective withdrawals that lure the attackers deeper into structured kill zones formed by terrain, elevation, and sightline control. As the battle intensifies, the enemy begins to lose coordination. Their formations, once fluid and adaptive, start to fragment under sustained pressure. Communication between their groups weakens. As they are forced into separated pockets of engagement, the forest no longer provides them with unified control of movement. By late afternoon, the shift becomes irreversible. The enemy attempt to maintain pressure fails as their units can no longer synchronize. Across the terrain, the defenders, now fully aligned with the captain's system, begin pushing back with controlled confidence. Positions that were lost earlier are reclaimed not through desperation, but through structured counter-movement. The battle ends before sunset. The enemy withdraws in scattered formations, unable to sustain cohesion inside the forest-controlled zones. The defenders hold the entire line for the first time. Since the collapse began, exhausted soldiers do not celebrate loudly. They simply stand in silence, realizing that the forest did not change but for the first time. They understood how to fight inside it. The soldiers remain in place, scattered along the trench lines in between the trees, too drained to move immediately. Their uniforms are covered in dirt and cold sweat, rifles still in hand, eyes scanning instinctively even though the enemy has already withdrawn. There is no cheering. The weight of what just happened takes longer to process than the battle itself. The captain sits alone on a low, wooden crate near the edge of the command position, looking into the forest without urgency. He does not appear relieved or celebratory. His expression is calm, almost detached, as if he is reading something in the landscape that others cannot see yet. Round him, the battlefield feels quieter than it has any right to be. One of the younger soldiers finally breaks the silence. Stepping forward slowly with disbelief still in his voice, he asks how it was possible to turn a collapsing front into a controlled defense. In such a short time, others begin to gather, watching the captain with the same question forming in their eyes, mixed with exhaustion, admiration, and something closer to disbelief than understanding. The captain does not answer immediately. He keeps looking at the forest, as if measuring something invisible that still exists beyond the trees. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and steady, carrying no pride in the victory, only recognition of what the forest always demands from those who try to hold it. He simply says that the forest does not change. Only the people who understand it survive long enough to see its patterns repeat. And for the first time, the soldiers realize they were never just fighting an enemy but fighting their own inability to read the ground beneath their feet. The captain remains seated in silence, while the soldiers continue watching him with shock and respect, finally understanding who he is. Then the moment settles, and the forest returns to its endless stillness. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you would have done in this situation. Would you trust the retired captain from the beginning, or doubt him like the others did?